In modernity, it seems that many people have lost touch with their root, getting lost in the trappings of modern life. This course is an attempt to reconnect us to this root of Western civilization. Okay, hello and welcome to this very first episode of the history of consciousness. So, before I begin, I first would want to say a bit for those that have not signed up yet for this course, who are watching the first free bit on YouTube. If you want to watch the entire course, you can sign up. You can sign up for it. Now see something on the screen where you can see the different tiers, and it's €5 minimum. It will show up in dollars and other currencies as well, depending on where you're at. I just know that it's €5 within Europe. But that aside, so yes. The history of consciousness. So this course is going to be divided into different sections. There's going to be 12 episodes in total. Once a month, there's going to be an episode coming out. First 2 episodes, really an introduction, and then here you can see the overview of the ages. And what you can see here is first Age of Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, and then modernity. You can also see then the historical dates here, so the dates and the time periods in which this takes place. The ages that you can see here, or more, you should see it more as like a guideline, like similar like how Carl Jung used in Aeon, that he was talking about the Aeon of Pisces, and in that sense I'm going to talk about Aeon of Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, and Pisces, and then specifically look at modernity, which is like the 17th century to the 21st century, which falls within the second fish of Pisces, really, but I want to like highlight, because that's where we're at now. You can here up left in the screen see the Great Mother. That stage of Cancer will be within the course going to talk. Well, in that sense, the Great Mother, yes, but really it's going to look at Göbekli Tepe and the Great Mother cult and the Snake Goddess cult that came out of that time period. And really try to dig a bit deeper into that to look at kind of like the foundations of a lot of the other stuff that's gonna come up. Then you have the Divine Twins, and that's really about a particular mythology that's in the European, even though there's like some elements that are not really just in the European in it as well. And we're gonna look at that specifically, because it connects well with an important base for Western civilization that I kind of focus on mostly, even though there's like influences from outside of as well, because things hardly are in the vacuum. So, and it's good to look a bit outside into like some different cultural, civilizational branches than just one would say like, well, this particular branch that is Indo-European. You can see that too with this part, like about the Age of Taurus, which is Egypt, about divine balance. But then coming back then, though, to the mystery schools and like a lot of the hero mythology, and kind of like how that ties into individuation. Then obviously the two fishes of the Age of Pisces, kind of like to really show kind of like what's going on there, and really like show with a lot of the myths, the stories that people were telling, that what kind of was happening symbolically. And the first fish of Christianity leading into the second fish of science, really, and that's leads us right where we're at now, the meaning crisis, which I will be talking more about, the more current, I guess, mythological stories. And the overall idea for really with the course is to like for me to really like show you how all of these things are really connected in like one big flow, and how every ion kind of builds upon the previous ion, and that things are more connected than we truly think, and that in that sense the root goes much deeper than just Age of Pisces. And it's good to know that it goes deeper than that there's more to it, to this development, and that there's so much more to it, to also with the mystery schools, with like Plato and Aristotle and such figures, like where their philosophies kind of like came out of, and like really like what's the source of all of this, and how does this all connect. But yes, should maybe head to the first part of the introduction. So before we can head into the different ages, we first have to delve into Carl Jung and the unconscious, so we can really build a proper foundation for what is to come still, which is going to be this part and the next part that's going to come out. So really, I think then should start with the very basics. And first, for people who do not know who Carl Jung is, so Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and he founded analytical psychology instead of the type of psychology that Freud or Adler founded. And he kind of combined the names to create his own particular, I guess you could call it, branch of psychology. As I have here also written down, he really is known for the concept of the collective unconscious and his theory of personality types and archetypes. Even though he did dive into other things too, and the structure of the psyche in his own, like I guess you could call it, Jungian lens, which is what we're gonna really like dive in really next. But first, so it's important to really know what the kind of like the, could call it, the differences are between Freud and Jung. Well, I guess one really big one that I kind of already want to like bring up now is that for Freud, basically, it was more of a tragedy life regarding like I guess the psychological ailments that people have, the different neuroses, the complexes that are connected to it, which we'll still get into, like what those are. Where for Jung, really, it was really more like, no, we can actually do something about this. Like there's more to it than just like this storehouse of repressed stuff that's there, and that's the unconscious, and that's it, and there's nothing more to it. Even though like yes, Carl Jung was an early supporter of Freud, and like they had this shared interest in the unconscious, and they had like agreements regarding things, like for instance, looking at a person's past and childhood, like like obviously these experiences determine future behavior, but similarly also like that the future aspirations and really the future has its own influence as well. It's not like in that sense, like that we're stuck with the past. There's an ability to move on from these things, so that we can actually become like a whole individual. It's kind of like because the big notion with Carl Jung, really, there's more similarities too. Like they saw the psyche as like as these interacting systems and these interacting parts, and that really, in that sense, it isn't just you just have consciousness and that's it. No, there's like consciousness and unconsciousness, and within that there is like it also says on this slide here, the ego. We have the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. But the collective unconscious is even like a deeper layer, really. But within like the, even the ego has only like a particular field of really consciousness, and there's so much within the personal unconscious that's there that we're not really aware of. It's like, if you really want to think about this, it's like, for instance, you can have certain thoughts that you have during the day, but you're not constantly aware of it, even though you still know these things. Because there's a particular layer of that, because it's the I guess you could call it the spotlight of consciousness, where it's shining upon, and that's where the awareness is. But then there's the unconscious, and there's like this immediate field that really is like, you could call it close to ego consciousness. But then there's the deeper layers as well. You can then also see here in this next slide here also, you can see the ego with the downward arrow pointing towards personal unconscious, and then you have also complexes. And with regarding to that, that it's not really just that the ego can do things, but complexes and the personal unconscious have also an influence on behavior, even though like they also have an influence on dreams and symbols and like the symbolism of what's coming up. But even also in a deeper level, the collective unconscious, where the archetypes have an influence on behavior and on what's kind of like coming up in dreams and in symbols. And there isn't really such like a cut and dry barrier. It's like there's always something from the collective unconscious that can seep through into the personal unconscious of an individual, and it just happens. And some of these things are archetypal and hence are very ancient and are within the individual even, and they're just shared across individuals. So it's not just cultural. It goes deeper, really deeper than that. What this image also rightfully points out regarding symbols, that it's the natural language of the psyche. So with Freud, it's just disguised. So, and it's just basically what this is happening during the day. For Jung, it's not the case. For Jung, it's symbols are the natural language of the psyche. It's how the psyche, so the unconscious, communicates towards the ego. Further, also that it has a symbolic or metaphoric meaning. And the type of interpretation, like what these symbols mean, even though there is there can be particular meanings for symbols, it also depends on the context, because certain things can mean certain things, but then you have to be careful that in some context that it actually might mean something else, because the context of the dream matters as well, like what is going on there, so you don't actually mistake, like, oh yeah, egg means, for instance, this one thing, and then suddenly in another context you shouldn't be surprised that egg might actually mean something else. But then similarly, like with other symbols, generally it depends in dreams what it exactly is about, because it can generally hint at something, but there can be other things tied up to, within the personal context, or it can even be about a particular situation, something that comes up in like snake can refer to in some sense to someone who, for instance, is lying, even though it can also link towards the kind of the instinctive layer of the unconscious as well. But it really depends on the context of the dream, which one it really refers to when it comes to like the person. And when it comes to the personal unconscious and then the collective unconscious, one important thing to say also is that really the collective unconscious is a universal version of the personal unconscious, but also like how Jung in this quote here had said, like, the collective unconscious is a universal version of the personal unconscious, holding mental patterns or memory traces which are shared with other members of human species. And at the same time, it's also important to remember that regarding the collective unconscious, it's not just a separate thing from people. It's the individual people that make up the collective unconscious. These things aren't separate from us. So it's something that's beyond, in that sense, ego consciousness, or like the control of ego consciousness. But at the same time, it is part of all of us. And the archetypes then, when Jung talks about archetypes, he really talks about to like get this understanding clear that, like it has said here, ancestral memories. And yes, that's true. There's like a connection to like ancestral memories in some sense, which also in that sense also ties into archaic remnants that we'll be talking about in the second part more. But at the same time, these things that are called archetypes also are connected within the individual to basically what we could call instincts. It's kind of why it is shared across different people, different cultures, because we all it's the base of our being. And we express these then through literature, art, and dreams, and many more different ways, like how they can be expressed. I know we see them in movies are an art too, but we can see them there too, and they're kind of in everything that we do. But it's because they're part of us in that sense, really. But now scaling back to the individual more, because we'll still dive deeper into the archetypes and archaic remnants and these deeper layers still later in part 2. What's really important to also kind of understand here now first is the personal layer. So this is talking about an individual. So you can here see on the left on this slide here, you can see the persona, ego, you see the self, shadow, animus, anima, and then see the personal unconscious. And then you see here the collective consciousness and collective unconscious. Consciousness and collective unconscious. And what we're going to focus on now is the personal unconscious. So first the persona. So the persona you can really see as the social mask, the masks that we wear in social settings, and kind of like it's part of like this more morally connected part. Moral in the sense of like, things are expected of us, so we behave in a certain ways, and then we don't do certain other things, and there's a certain like cultural, social, and moral expectations of us, and that creates the persona. And the persona, the creation of the persona, at the same time, because it's socially, the social something ties into the shadow, and the ego is in between those two. And then you have the anima and the animus, and then the self. And the self, in that sense, you can really see as the whole. It's here in the center, and the self is not in the sense of that how people generally think of as the self, as self and ego being the same thing. In the Jungian lens, self really refers to the actual center of personality of the entire individual. That's like conscious and unconscious, and really persona and ego are normally the things that we tend to be somewhat conscious of. Ego specifically, yes. Persona, it depends. We should be conscious of it, even though for some people ego and persona can kind of get like almost conflated, which is not that good, because it's good to keep like a different to see the difference, so you can keep your mask off too. But so you have here then also the shadow and anima and animus, which are in the layer of the unconscious, of the personal unconscious.